complex this place was. Right here you see kind of a raised mound, and that would be all the Indian dwellings. And they actually go across the outside our property over to the place next door, and you can still see raised areas there. The church, of course, is there. The cemetery is there. The mortuary. There's a mound where this is. This is where all the warehouses were. The big question is, why do you come into the mission system? And the reasons are basically food, because from March, April, and May, we're in the starving period. There's nothing on the trees, nothing on the cactus. There aren't that many there aren't that many deer out there to eat, and rabbits and rats and everything. So you tend to literally starve every year. Well, Father Kino, who's a Jesuit priest, comes up the river and he brings two things in. He brings cattle, or slow elk if you prefer, and he brings winter wheat, which happens to come due in March, April, and May. So suddenly your bellies are full. So that's a pretty good deal. Now, there's a lot of mythology about enslavement of the Indians. We don't see that here. There are 5,000 Indians up and down this valley. At the most, the church has a residence of 199. So if they're enslaving people, they're doing a very inefficient job of it. And in fact, and if you think about it, if there's 199 of you and there's one of me, who's really going to run things around here? So pretty clear on that. So is the French and Indian War back east. Things are pretty successful. We have a community and everything, and this is a church is built in 1757. So this is the foundation of the church, and the Jesuits had that. Well, the Jesuits controlled your life from the first bell to the last bell of the day. There's a lot of people who believe it came from that white scar on the way back to Tucson, but there's plenty of places in the foothills you can get it.
There is limestone.
Yeah. And let's wander over here now. System. The Indians that live here actually, by 1822, have a chief financial officer, chief operating officer, and chief executive officer. I kid you not. There are words in Spanish that mean this, and they're that detailed. This was a two-story building. You can see, obviously, the second story was pretty strong by the number of holes you have here, original wood and all that in it. Well, all of the beams that were originally here all come from over in the Santa Ritas from Madera Canyon, 30 miles away. So if you're going to haul these over, we're not going to put them on our shoulder and haul them over, so we're going to have oxen. So let's say we have 35 pair of oxen, 2 oxen per beam here. We drive them across the prairie there, and we're doing it at 2 miles an hour if we're lucky. We're also going through Apache country, so that means we're going to have a lot of extra people around as guards and everything. So you don't want to do that too often. So this is a real cemetery you're in. In this area, there are 639 people buried. 10 of them were killed by Indians, so most died from illnesses and what have you like that. So we're in Europe, we're in a church. We lay the body out in the church. We all gather around whatever disease that person has. Now we all got it, so we all die. So they actually invent what's called a mortuary chapel, and this is where you would lay a body out and prepare it. Some people thought this was a charnel house, which means you let the body decompose above ground. The historic record tells us that's not true, because in southern Arizona we know that if you die today, by tomorrow morning we're going to put you in the ground, because it's just things go rot too fast. And the great tragedy isn't the fact that that people are dying, because like I said, now it's about the same rate. What the tragedy is all those people coming up from the south all have a connection of culture. They have a written history, a written traditions and everything are all written. You're probably related to half the people you pass on the way and everything. So there's a real connection. This isolated population up here, though, doesn't have that. So what happens, especially with diseases like smallpox and measles, it takes out the youth, the millennials, if you will. One of the interesting things about this place is we've been a national monument since 1908. So preservation of this place has been a problem since they actually built this church, say 1822, okay? Christmas Eve, we had a big rainstorm caused the blowout. New Year's Eve, we had another rainstorm caused the blowout, and a couple weeks ago there was another rainstorm and blew it out even farther. The rain is supposed to run off the roof, go down these canals or canales, but instead the rain's coming off here, and you can see the erosion that it caused right here. Well, they can't fix that. This is a north-facing wall, so it's not getting sunshine, so they have to wait till we dry out before they can really repair that. Preservation since the beginning has been an issue. There's really no consensus in the whole world on how you preserve a ruin, which this is. So here we have original plaster. They put on modern plaster. Well, you see the thickness of it. That modern stuff weighs down on the old stuff, pulls it out from the wall, cracks, and then big chunks fall out. So that doesn't work. So they try a thinner plaster. That works pretty good actually, except it's expensive because it'll crack within 1 to 5 years, so you have to go back and repair it. Other solutions have been tried, and here's a little plasticky stuff. And what we did learn is that people would use concrete, they would use all kinds of things, and nothing works but the natural materials. Currently our preservationist is actually using what he calls sacrificial mud here. And so this erosion over here, as soon as it dries out good, he'll come over and put more mud on it. They're trying that, but again, there's no real agreement that that's the way to go. So there's still no solution for it. Okay, you're no longer Indians, now you're going to be priests, so let's go into the church. Get ready, by the way, for Mass. There's the steps to go up to the pulpit. If any of you are churchgoers, you know that nowadays the priest tends to hang out on the ground with us, but in those days, representing God, he would be way above. What's neat about this room too is all kinds of famous people have stayed in here and they've written their names. Black Jack Pershing was here, General Pershing from World War I in Pancho Villa. He actually was here in 1932, and he said, "Oh, I slept in that corner for 2 days as a young second lieutenant and wrote my name on the wall." Well, his name sloughed off. It was where that blonde spot was, but it was gone by the time he got here. Now, mythology again. You can see the floor is a little rough where I'm standing. Well, in the 1880s, treasure hunters come in here and they start digging down. And they dig 7 feet down looking for that magical treasure. Jesuit treasure, San Franciscan church, but nonetheless, they dig 7 feet down. They found nothing. Archaeologists come in here in the 1930s again. They said, just to make sure, we're going to go down 9 feet. So they dig 9 feet down. They don't find anything. I'm convinced that 10 feet is a shorter number, so that's what it is. The first thing I'll call your attention to is the paint. And I pointed out that baby blue paint up there in the museum. And this gray would be baby blue plaster and adobe. You get to the end, you get to start over again. It's constant here. So now let's go ahead and go down right down here. And can I help you with this? Put in by the Park Service. The original floor, the only last piece, is right here. The floor was 6 inches of highly polished limestone, dyed terracotta with brick dust, and it actually, they say it was so smooth you could ice skate on it. Apparently it was that good. When the floor had been dug up by treasure hunters so much that they had 7 pieces left before they put this floor on. My understanding is it actually is still under here. So, but this is a kneeling bench, and this is the only piece to survive, which is kind of interesting. So you did not have pews. You would stand or kneel in church. Now right here, there's a picture right here so you can see what I'm talking about, the choir loft. The archway's right here, the choir loft's right above my head. This is the robing room where the choir would get ready, and you can still hear the ghost all locked away in there, so, and singing. The one priest says, I have a mixed choir of men and women, of 10 men and women, and they could compete with anybody in Europe. And another priest says, I have a woman who has the voice of an angel. And if you think about it, you can imagine them singing in Latin mostly, and sometimes Spanish, and sometimes their own language as well. Way here, or look at the window and see how thick it is. I mean, they're very, very thick walls. Also, the window, if you look at it, is square on the outside and slowly rounds out as it comes in here. This is the second coolest room to be in the summertime, by the way, the sacristy being the first. All of the plaster up here is original. The stairs are original here, except look at the center, and that all looks a little distorted. During the 1920s and 30s, they had bats in here, and they could not get rid of them until they finally put the screens in and everything. The bats kept digging deeper and deeper and deeper, so they filled that up. Now this is the staircase that goes up to the robing room and up to the bell tower. Even we don't get to go up there. It's kind of interesting, right before you go up into the bell tower and come outside, flies get in there, and it's like some horror movie with all these flies in this little narrow passage, so it's kind of weird. So, Ranger myth again, by the way, 1935 floor, I told you, no one can tell me, but clearly there was a baptismal font in here, but no one can tell you when, where, how. There's no record of it in here, so kind of interesting. Now, Mexico gets its independence from Spain in 1821. the economy immediately starts to crash. And what do we do when the economy crashes? We got to blame somebody. So they say it's the Spaniards. So in 1828, Mexico passes an expulsion act and kicks all the Spaniards out of the country. Our priest, who's here at this time, says, I am, he says, give me 2 weeks, I'll have that bell tower finished. And they say, no, get out. Well, 2 years later, they go, well, that was a really stupid idea. And so they let them back in again, so all the Spaniards back in. And this ends up becoming a Franciscan church again after that period. Moorish are actually painted green, and the lower niches, which are Roman in influence, are actually painted blue. Go up to the bell tower and look at the scallop. Well, that's the sign of Santiago, St. James, the patron saint of Spain. So kind of neat. There's a lot of influences here, a lot of fun stuff here. So it must have been just really, really an impressive church, and you can see why the Indians would be pulled into it. Now if we can go over here.